we'll move on now to Dr. Basem Abdullah. Dr. Basem is founder and chairman of the International Renewable Energy Coalition here in Bahrain. He's also the managing director of JHS Company in Japan, which is a well-known Japanese sustainable energy company. He's also a member of the Japan Council for Renewable Energy. He's an author and holds several patents and has some patent applications at the moment in the field of solar energy, including technology for making semi-flexible solar panels, but with silicon. Dr. Basem, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alex, for the introduction. I would like to thank the organizing committee, His Excellency Dr. Mirza, and the Bahrain Society of Engineers for holding this event and for inviting me to be part of it. Thank you very much for that. I think, as you mentioned a while ago, we are running out of time or late in time, so I'm going to go directly to the presentation. Let me share it with you. This is my presentation. The presentation, it is about a successful implementation of Solar Power Purchase Agreement, SPPA. Today, in the early session, Dr. Mirza was mentioning about the school project of 3 mega. Actually, we are one of the companies that we win the tender, and actually we went through a longer process to develop the solar power purchase agreement with the Ministry of Education and under the support of the Sustainable Energy Authority. Today, I'm going to summarize this experience, and at the same time to give an idea about different types of PPAs. So the presentation, my presentation is going to be divided in 7 sections. First of all, I'm going to give a definition of PPA for the people who maybe does not know what's PPA. I'll talk later about the physical PPA, which is off-site agreement. I will talk about the virtual PPA, then about the model, the PPA model that we used in Bahrain when signing this agreement with the Ministry of Education. I will just list up the content of that agreement. Then I will mention the benefits and challenges of the PPA from both sides, the side of the seller and the side of the buyer. And at the end, I will have some conclusions. Let me define what is the power purchase agreement. A solar power purchase agreement.
If I could recommend to put the presentation on presentation mode, perhaps.
Okay, let me see that. Okay, is it fine now? Very good, sorry for that. So the power purchase agreement is a contract between 2 parties, one which generates electricity, which we call it the seller, and one which is looking to purchase electricity, the buyer. The PPA defines all the commercial terms for the sale of electricity between the 2 parties, including when the project will begin commercial operation, a schedule for delivery of electricity, penalties for under delivery, payment terms, and termination. A PPA is the principal agreement that defines the revenue and the credit quality of generating projects and is thus a key instrument of project finance. There are many forms of PPA in use today, and they vary according to the needs of buyer, seller, and financing parties. Now, just I would like to keep in your mind the icons below, because I'm going to use it in the presentation. The first icon to the left, solar panel and wind mill, with this is the seller or the renewable generator or developer. The one in the middle is the buyer, which could be a governmental body, it could be a corporate, and the one to the right is the electricity provider, such as EWA. Now, let me talk about the first type of PPA. This is the physical power purchase agreement. A buyer purchases electricity from a large-scale off-site renewable generator. Here, the buyer and the seller. Buyers agrees to purchase energy generated by the renewable generator at a fixed price over 12 to 25 years. The electricity from the renewable plant is delivered to buyer as it is generated. Typically, the plant owner also delivers the associated renewable energy certificate. The renewable energy reduced the amount of electricity buyer needs to buy from their normal energy provider. So this is the first type, which we call it the physical power purchase agreement. So in this model, the plant, it is out of the property of the buyer, but the buyer will get benefit and will get use the renewable energy directly, and by this, the buyer will reduce the amount of electricity that he will pull out from the grid. This is the first model. The second, virtual power purchase agreement. A buyer enables a large-scale project without using the generated electricity. In this model, the buyer continues to purchase electricity from the energy provider as usual. So nothing will change in the relation between the buyer and the electricity provider. You are getting the electricity from EWA, you are going to continue getting the electricity from EWA. But on the other hand, buyers sign a separate agreement to purchase the energy and renewable energy certificate generated by a renewable generator at a fixed price for 12 to 25 years. So you will have an agreement. You will have an agreement, and the renewable energy is sold into the wholesale sale electricity market, which is with the market price. The variable revenues from these sales are passed through to buyer. What do I mean by that? When the market price is higher than the PPA price, the developer pays the buyer the difference. When market price is smaller than the PPA price, the buyer pays the developer the difference. So your electricity as a buyer will come directly from the electricity provider, but you are going to get the advantage between the contract, the agreement you have with the developer and with the market price. So based on the market price, you will get the advantage. This is the second type of the PPA, which is the virtual PPA. And the third, it is a private wire PPA. A buyer purchase electricity from a small-scale on-site renewable generator. Buyer agrees to purchase all the energy generated by the renewable generator at a fixed price for 20 years. The seller should install the power plant on the property of the buyer. The electricity from the new renewable plant is delivered to buyer as it is generated. Any extra energy over the power required by the buyer is to be injected to the grid. The renewable energy reduces the amount of electricity buyer needs to buy from normal general provider. The exceeding power injected in the grid are to be balanced with the withdrawn power from the electricity provider. So by this model, actually the buyer will offer his property for the seller to install the power plant, and the buyer will use the electricity directly, and if there is something extra, the buyer will just inject into the grid. So last year in December, we signed the PPA with the Ministry of Education, and actually, it's not only us, 3 companies signed 3 different PPAs. But which PPA model did we use in Bahrain? Actually, we used the 3rd model, the wired model. There was no possibility, or it was difficult, I think, to be adopt either the physical or the virtual PPA in Bahrain. And the reason for that goes to, first of all, for the physical PPA, what is the difficulty to implement this model in Bahrain? I believe, one, the net metering policy, which issued in 2017 and updated in 2019, does not recognize a direct power for money relation between the seller and buyer. 2, seller or IPP, independent power producer, cannot produce power and inject it in public grid for feed-in tariff. 3rd, there is no classification for IPP in the company business registration category. For the virtual PPA, the electricity market is not yet open to IPP companies. Developing the net metering policy is required, and there is some other issue which is apart from the difficulties in the physical model that I already talked about. The principle for the first PPA agreement signed in Bahrain, it is, as you can see in the slide, a government building. This is the buyer or the off-taker. The other party, it is a successful bidder or independent power producer. The buyer will offer the property, the roof, for 0 cost. The successful bidder will develop the system and will make the installation, and we start produce the energy for the benefit of the buyer. This is for fixed tariff, and based on the net metering, the buyer will inject the extra power to the power utility for a credit to be accounted to him. So this is the model that was adopted in last year with the Ministry of Education. This is the structure of the PPA, and actually I would like to advise anybody who would like to get in to this business and sign a PPA in the future, because so far, to my knowledge, there is a lot of governmental buildings which going to be to adopt the same thing, the same structure of the PPA. Please hire a legal consultant when you want to do this, because the issue, it is not easy. I still remember that we started the negotiation of the PPA. I think it was in early July, but we didn't finish it until the end of December. More than 5 months to my schedule. I think I dedicated more than 300 hours looking into this PPA. It was really tough negotiation. We start in version 3 and we finished in version 14. So we upgraded this PPA for 11 times continuously. Let me go through the articles. Article 1, definition and interpretation. Article 2, scope of work. Article 3, term of the agreement. Condition precedent. Applicable tariff, power sale and purchase. And you go in until Article 22, and actually there is article this is Article 22. There is Article 22, but I didn't find a place for it in the slide. You know, so you have a lot of information to put into this agreement. This is just a copy for the content table of content for this agreement. The contract or the agreement itself, it went to 132 pages. It is really need a lot of effort because it is a long-term agreement which will go for 20 years. So you need to give it a lot of time, because if you sign it today, there is somebody you know will suffer from it in the long run. 20 years from now, I don't know if I'm going to be in the same company or not, or maybe if I'm going to be alive or not 20 years from now. But this agreement, it is a binding agreement and will go for 20 years. Now, just in short, what is the benefit and the challenges of the PPA from the buyer point of view? First of all, for the benefit, there is no upfront capital cost, predictable energy pricing, no system performance or operation risk. Project can be cash flow positive for day one. Potential to make claims about being solar powered. Potential reduction in carbon footprint. Also increasing in the property value. Support for local economy and job creation. And the challenges, more complex negotiation. It is not an easy job to be done. Administrative costs of paying 2 separate electricity bills if system does not meet 100% of site electric load. I mean, you are going to have 2 bills, one for the seller and the other for the utility. Potential increase in property taxes if property value is reassessed. There will be also some difficulties in changing the layout of the property you have, because you already leased a part of the roof or the property to the buyer. Also, from the perspective of the seller, what is the benefit and the challenges? The buyer is a governmental body, so you can secure that your money is coming to you for 20 years. And this is stable income for 20 years. Secured power plant location. potential reduction in carbon footprint, renewable energy certificates. And the challenges, more complex negotiation. The challenges that I faced, I'm writing just a bit of it, there was a lot of challenges. Possible relocation of the project on the cost of the seller is available in the PPA. And the default of the seller is to be penalized in cash, while the default of the buyer is to be penalized by extending the agreement term. Inflation effects were ignored completely in the current PPA. Just to summarize, solar power purchase agreements were signed for the first time in Bahrain through a formal tender process. This experience will lead into a further step to implement more solar energy projects in the country. Enhancing and upgrading the net metering policy and other related regulations will help developing the solar energy market. Developing new models of PPA can be achieved by developing the solar energy market. And thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Basem, for a very informative presentation and a reminder of how the first PPAs for renewables were developed and signed.